thrilled to welcome Joe Biden to Orange County. I hope it's okay. I forgot the president, Joe Biden.
Joe's good enough.
Here and across the country, patients have been paying more and more to get medicines they need to live. Prices have been skyrocketing and families have been hurting. That is no accident. Prices are going up because Big Pharma has been pushing them higher. Corporate executives handcuffed Americans with higher costs using their lobbyists to get a giveaway that said Medicare can't negotiate lower drug prices. The result is that all of us, as patients and as taxpayers, have been getting ripped off. No more. Allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices is good for patients, good for families, and good for taxpayers. It is good for us as a country. For Americans who've long been suffering from skyrocketing drug prices, the Inflation Reduction Act delivers solutions. We faced a fight. In the 12 months before we passed this landmark bill, Big Pharma spent over $57 million on advertising campaigns to stop it. So far this year, the industry has spent more than $187 million on lobbying. Big Pharma fights tooth and nail to prevent Medicare from negotiating fair prices because it wants to line its pockets with our taxpayer dollars. Congressional Democrats and President Biden said, enough is enough. We stood up to special interests and we put people first. Every single Republican in Washington voted against patients, against families, and against taxpayers. In the Senate, Republican politicians voted to limit how much Americans can save on prescription drugs and to prevent all patients from getting insulin. And House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy has vowed that next term it's his priority to return Big Pharma's unchecked power to charge patients whatever it wants. That is a slap in the face to California families who are grappling with high costs. House Republicans are more interested in pointing fingers about inflation than they are in delivering solutions. Here is the stone-cold truth. Corporate greed worsens health outcomes, rips off taxpayers, and threatens our capitalist economy. Capitalism relies on competition, on price transparency, and on consumer choice. Big Pharma has unfairly crowded out competitors. The industry has inexplicably set ridiculous launch prices and blocked cheaper options. And patients, they have no choice when they need to take these medications to survive. Drug price negotiation restores accountability to this broken market. You can stand with Big Pharma, or you can stand with families. You can stand with drug company executives, or you can stand with taxpayers. You can stand with corporate special interests, or you can stand with capitalism. Let me tell you where I stand. I will always put families first, fight for taxpayers, and work to strengthen our capitalist economy. You have my word. Now, I am honored to introduce someone who is no stranger to the fight against Big Pharma, my friend, Susan Meyer.
Nope, I'm good. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name, as Congresswoman said, Susan Meyer, and I grew up here in Orange County. I currently work part-time for my local school district. So 6 years ago, I needed to take an early retirement from my job that I loved as a labor relations representative to take care of my mom. She was a widow and lost her husband after 53 years of marriage. She lived alone. One day, my mom asked me to review her bank account as she was having a hard time making ends meet. I saw she was spending an extraordinary amount of money on her prescription medications. She was like many seniors and battled with diabetes, high blood pressure, cholesterol. You know what I'm talking about. We talked about ways to save money. Well, it was hard. She was spending more than she was earning through her small pension and Social Security. Then my mom's health began to deteriorate, and I found myself driving out to her home more often to take care of her. And I just couldn't understand what was going on all of a sudden with her health. Then one day she calls me up, my brilliant mother, right, who comes up with great ideas, and she said, "Susan, you don't have to worry about me anymore. I found a way to cut my prescription cost in half. I found a little gizmo at the CVS, a little plastic gizmo, and I can cut my pills in half. Now I have money for food and I can pay my bills." Oh my gosh, now I suddenly understood why my mother's health was taking a turn for the worst. She was literally taking half of her prescribed medication to save money. That shouldn't happen here in America. Seniors shouldn't have to choose between taking their medication and paying for food or housing. It's why I decided to help organize seniors with the California Alliance for Retired Americans. Some of our members are here today. Woo-hoo. Our goal is to maintain and improve Social Security and Medicare for all. And that's why I am so honored to introduce someone who is fighting to protect Social Security and Medicare every day. Someone who signed the Inflation Reduction Act into law, which will lower the cost of prescription drugs for seniors and make health care more affordable. So most importantly, someone who understands the challenges facing working families. It is my honor to introduce to you the President of the United States, Joe Biden. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Well, I'm great to be here in Orange County at Irvine Valley College. And Susan, thank you for that introduction. Please sit down, please. Thank you, if you have a seat. And well, thank you so much. Look, unfortunately, the story Susan told is not unique. And it's, many, many families that are going through this. But before I begin the point of my discussion today, I look over there and I see free Iran. And I want you to know we stand with the citizens and brave women of Iran. For real. For real. And who right now are demonstrating to secure their very basic fundamental rights. Women and men should have the right to freedom of expression and assembly. And women all over the world are being persecuted in various ways. But they should be able to wear in God's name what they want to wear. No one should be telling them what to wear. And Iran has to end the violence against its own citizens, simply exercising their fundamental rights. And, Masha Amini's death was, I've been doing foreign policy a long, long time. It stunned me what it awakened in Iran. And it's awakened something that I don't think will be quieted in a long, long time. And so I want to thank you all for speaking out. I want to thank the Persian community here for being so vocal and continue. It matters. That's one thing you don't have to tell me. You met my wife? I married up. I was one of those guys my whole life. I've been surrounded by women who've taken care of me. Maybe they're smarter than I am. My younger sister used to be 3 years younger than me. Now she's 23 years younger. There's not a single solitary Biden man that is younger than any Biden woman. And my wife, by the way, at a community college, my wife is teaching today. My wife is a full-time college professor at a community college. And look, I'm here today because I want to share the progress we're making to bring down the cost, healthcare costs for everybody. And thanks to Democrats in Congress like Lou and also Katie. And Katie's, Katie's just been a star. You can tell she's not passionate about much, and you can tell she's a retiring soul. But all kidding aside, a policy whiz who knows how to talk to folks, a fighter who's taken on the powerful special interest. And we've seen it all. No drug company executive wants to testify in Congress before Katie. Nobody wants to do that to answer her questions, because they're to the point and they're revealing. Katie's is a big reason why I've been able to make such progress dealing with health care. And that's what I want to talk to you a little bit about today. I know it's been a tough 4 or 5 years for the country. We've made a lot of progress, but folks, a lot of folks are still struggling. Folks who came from the families I came from, where you sit around the kitchen table at the end of the month and wonder how in God's name we're going to pay for everything. Do we have enough? Well, I think about it the way my dad did. He used to talk about it in a way that so many of you at home still talk about it around that kitchen table or that dinner table. How much are the monthly bills? And how are we going to have to pay for all the necessities that extend beyond that? Is there enough left over? My dad used to use the phrase, for just a little bit of breathing room. My dad was a well-read, high school educated guy whose great regret was he never got to go to school. But he used to talk about everyone's entitled to be treated with dignity. And when you don't have the capacity to meet the basic needs of your children and your family, you're deprived of your dignity. You're deprived of your dignity. It's especially the case when it comes to health care and prescription drug costs. That's why Katie's leadership and the work of the Democrats in Congress is so consequential. And Katie, I'm not just being nice because I'm in your district. It happens to be true. No, I mean it. You are a fighter, you're decent, you're honorable, and everybody respects you. Everybody respects you, and it's a big deal because you get a lot done. I wrote and then signed into law the Inflation Reduction Act. They used to call it, in the press, poor people have to follow me all over the country. We heard me say it before. It used to be called Build Back Better, but we got almost all of it. That Inflation Reduction Act did a lot of things. It had just a short amount of money, $368 billion for the climate, which it did a whole range of things. But what it did was it took on special interests in a way that we haven't in a long time. I know I don't look it, but I've been around for a while. And it's one of the most significant laws in our history when it comes to helping families pay their bills at the end of the month. Look, take the prescription drug cost. We pay more for prescription drugs than any nation in the world for the same, not drugs generically, the same exact drug. The cost of that drug by the same company sold in France and the United States is sometimes 25% cheaper, or Canada, or any other place I can name for you. And there's no reason for it because big pharma has been just a dominant force. Katie laid out the numbers that they expended. For years, many of us have been trying to fix that problem. Why is it that, for example, the VA can negotiate drug prices with pharma? They say, we're not going to pay you more than A, B, C, or D, X amount for the The only exemption written into the law was that Medicare cannot negotiate the price of a drug with the drug companies, where they make billions of dollars through Medicare. For years, Big Pharma stood in the way. And for years, there's been no check on how high or fast pharma can raise drug prices. When I ran for this office, I ran on this platform. It's just not right. This year, drug companies alone raised the price of more than 1,200 drugs. This year, this calendar year, raised the price on 1,200 drugs above the rate of inflation. Not a single additional bit of information was injected into that drug. Not any more experimentation. Nothing new. Same exact drug. Same drug. And it gets increased. 1,200 of them. 1,200. The average price increase for those drugs is over 30%. 30%. In 2022, the price for one blood pressure drug that millions of Medicare beneficiaries rely on increased by over 500%. Who in God's name do they think they are? They thought they were impervious. They had so much power. You think I'm joking? We've been trying, a guy like me has been around the Senate a long time, been trying to take them on forever. And they're powerful. And people were afraid to take them on. Another drug used to treat autoimmune conditions increased just this year by $1,000. By $1,000. This is outrageous. But this year the American people won. We took on Big Pharma and we beat them finally. We beat them finally. Now if Big Pharma tries to raise drug prices faster than inflation, they're going to have to write a check to Medicare to cover the difference. Now instead of that money going in the pockets of drug companies, it's going to go into the pockets in the form of lower drug prices in America. There's more money at the end of the month to pay for groceries, to get your car repaired, to buy your grandson a birthday present, whatever it is. The Inflation Reduction Act gives Medicare the power to negotiate lower prescription drug prices. And seniors will see their out-of-pocket costs for drugs capped at $2,000 a year. If you're on Medicare, you cannot be charged more than $2,000 a year, no matter what drugs you get. I'm serious. It's a gigantic change. A gigantic change. My mother had the fortune of having two successful brothers and a sister. I was kind of the guy out, but anyway. But my mom lived with me after my dad died. And she used to sneak up to the drugstore to get her prescriptions because she didn't want us to know she didn't have enough money to pay for it. She wouldn't tell us. I'm not joking. I'm not joking. She didn't want anybody to know she did not have the money to pay for it. So finally went up and I made sure that whatever she had in her wallet, that's what the drugstore charged her because I gave them whatever they need. They had a card. My generic point is think of all the mothers and fathers out there like your mom was. All of them. Their pride is in the stake it well. These are the same people who taught us to stand up, don't complain, never explain in my house. Well, folks, whether it's expensive drugs, another drug they need to survive, we're talking about drugs that cost $9,000, $10,000, and $14,000 a year, particularly cancer drugs. The Inflation Reduction Act caps that cost and caps the cost of insulin. How many of you know someone, and maybe many of you, that need that insulin for diabetes? Well, go know how much it costs for them to make that insulin and package it? $10 dollars. $10 total. They're charging up to $400 to $1,000 depending on where you live for that drug. I was in Virginia about 4 or 5 months ago and doing a town hall, and a woman stood up and she started to cry. She said, "My 2 kids have diabetes. And we have to cut the pills in half. We have to share the insulin. Excuse me. We have to share it." She said, imagine being a parent, not having enough insurance, not being able to afford it, and looking at your son or daughter and knowing if they don't get that insulin, they could literally permanently be scarred and or die. What does that do to people? What's it do? Folks, the Inflation Reduction Act caps the cost of insulin as $35 a month instead of $400 a month. Now, what Katie didn't tell you, she got in the House passed, it applied to everyone, not just to Medicare patients. Well, the Senate, they kicked out coverage for non-Medicare patients. So there's 200,000 kids out there that you have to pay a hell of a lot for their diabetes insulin. Folks, look, as I said, it costs $10 to make. The drug companies charge more than 30 times that. And then again, imagine being that parent, not having the money. What do you do? What do you do? Just imagine. Well, you're going to keep fighting for lower drug costs, saving insulin for children and families as well, because if we keep the House and Senate this time, we are going to make sure it applies to everybody in the country. Guaranteed. Because the Inflation Reduction Act, seniors on Part D Medicare will also be able to get their recommended vaccines like shingles vaccines for free, no copay. And tomorrow will mark the beginning of Medicaid's open enrollment period. So when seniors pick plans for next year, they'll be able to take advantage of the progress we made. But that's not all. For years, the fee you pay for Medicare to cover your visits to your doctor's office have gone up. Now, for the first time in more than a decade, the fees are going to go down. And yesterday, we announced that Social Security benefits are going to be going up an average of $140 a month starting next month. And folks, look, seniors are going to get ahead of inflation next year. For the first time in 10 years, their Social Security checks are going to go up while Medicare premiums go down. And this is a big deal for seniors. And this morning, I issued an executive order directing the Department of Health and Human Services within 90 days to put a plan on my desk finding an additional way to lower prescription drug costs for seniors, because there's other ways we can do this in addition. But we're not just focused on seniors. Earlier this week, the Treasury Department took action to fix a problem that was making it harder for families to afford health care coverage for their spouse or a child, the so-called family glitch rule. It's a glitch, all right. Under the old rules, a working mom was told as long as she could afford employer-based coverage for herself, she couldn't qualify for premium subsidies to afford coverage for her family. Well, now, 1 million people will gain coverage and pay lower premiums. Last year, a family of four with health coverage through the Affordable Care Act saved $2,400 from the American Rescue Plan that I signed into law. Now, Inflation Reduction Act is going to lock that in place for lower health care and premiums for millions of families. Folks, and by the way, the drug companies are going to continue to do very well in terms of profit. We're not costing them anything other than they should get costs. But folks, let me tell you something. Every single Democrat, as in fact Katie spoke about, every single one voted for Inflation Reduction Act. Not a single solitary Republican in both the House of Representatives and the United States Senate voted for it. Every single one voted against it. Every single one. Not only that, now congressional Republicans are telling us their number one priority is to repeal, if they win back the House and Senate, repeal the Inflation Reduction Act. That includes things I'm not even talking about today, including the environment. But let's be crystal clear about what that means. If Republicans in Congress have their way, it's going to mean the power we just gave Medicare to negotiate lower prescription drug prices and other costs over time goes away, gone. The $2,000 cap on prescription drugs goes away, gone. The $35 a month cap on insulin for Medicare is gone. Savings from health care premiums we just got for millions of Americans, gone. And of course, it's not the Inflation Reduction Act they want to get rid of. They're still determined to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. What people don't realize, they didn't realize the Affordable Care Act is the only basis upon which people with a pre-existing condition can get health care, unless you can afford an expensive policy. If Republicans have their way, that's gone as well. And here's the bottom line. So please hear this. When it actually comes time to do something about inflation around the kitchen table, Republicans in Congress are saying no. If Republicans take control, the prices are going to go up, as will inflation. It's this simple. Sadly, they go even further. Already a vast majority of the House Republicans have signed on to a Republican budget that's going to cut, hear me now, cut Medicare and Social Security. Cut it. Rick Scott, the senator from Florida, he's the head of the program to elect Republican senators. He's proposed a plan to put Social Security and Medicare in the chopping block every 5 years. If you don't vote for it again, it goes away. That means every 5 years, Congress will vote to cut, reduce, or completely eliminate Social Security and Medicare. And then there's Ron Johnson, a senator from Wisconsin. He thinks every 4 years, this is the God's truth. Do we have the pamphlets out here, that their pamphlets? Take a look at it. Their words, not mine. He thinks every 5 years is too long to wait. So he wants Social Security and Medicare to be in the chopping block every single solitary year. If Congress doesn't vote to keep it, it goes away. It goes away. Not just Social Security and Medicare. He wants to put veterans' benefits and everything else in the federal budget at risk. Folks, let me close with this. Over the last few years, we've faced some of the most difficult challenges in our history. But we're making real progress. We got a long way to go. But we're making real progress helping folks get a little more breathing room. Despite the opposition from some of the most powerful special interests in the nation, we're lowering health care costs and strengthening Medicare. And we're fighting for folks who need our help. It's one of the reasons why I'm so optimistic about America's future. We just have to remember who in God's name we are. This is the United States of America. No. Not a joke. Look, there's not ever been a damn thing we can't do when we've set our mind to it. Name me something we've ever tried to... You're smiling, but name me one. Name me one thing we've ever tried to accomplish that when we did it together, we haven't been able to do it. There's nothing beyond our capacity. And that's the God's truth. Think about it. And the American public over the last 5 years has begun to lose hope that it's within our power to do almost anything. But we really can. But we've got to stick together. And I don't care whether you're a Democrat or Republican or an independent. The idea that people can charge 30, 40, 50, 60 times what it costs to make a drug, it just makes no sense when there's no alternative. It's not like you raise the price on a Chevy 10 times, you still can't go buy a Ford. I'm not joking. Well, there's no options. So, folks, I want to thank Katie for her incredible work, and I mean it. She is incredible in what she does. I mean it, Katie. And I want to say to all of you, God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you.